Well, isn't this amazing? Wow. By the way, I can't see a thing, but I can see some people down here. Now I can see you. Thank you. It's such a tremendous privilege to be here, and thank you for that. I hope I'll make it worth your while. I plan to do that for the next 30 minutes. This isn't a topic that's abstract or a topic that's just interesting. This is actually a topic about your lives, about my life, about your children and your friends. So I hope there's some takeaways here that are interesting for you, and I motivate you perhaps to action, because that's really powerful. Before I continue, I just want to say hello to my dad, who's watching this, I think, streaming on Facebook right now, and I hope he's doing well. And so let's start. This is my commute to work pretty much every day. Now, it might not look exactly like yours, but I bet you're fed up sitting in traffic. Right? You probably sit in traffic far longer than you need to. Now, I travel about 12 miles from my home to Palo Alto each day, and it shouldn't take that long. But depending when I leave, it can take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. It's really bad. And we should be kind of angry about that because our roadways and our cars are failing us. And we need some smart solutions to solve that. Now, this is in a world in which half the planet lives in cities. We just turned we turned over from from a minority to majority urban planet. So we're about 3.6 or 7 billion people are now living in cities. And each week, about 3 million more people move into cities. That means in about 20 years, about 2 billion more people will be in our cities. So that means a photograph like an image like this means that this will double if we don't fix it. And I would suggest we have to fix it. We have to fix it for a lot of reasons, not just the pain it is to sit in our cars. I want to show you some data here from NASA over the last 100 years. This is the average temperatures recorded across the planet over 100 years. And you'll notice that the orange areas are the average increased heating. And you'll see as we get through the 50s here, it's beginning to warm, especially in the northern part, in the 70s, and the southern. By the time we get to the 80s and the 90s, it's getting pretty hot on the planet. And this little animation here will stop at about 2015. Some updated information. 2016 was the hottest year ever recorded on the planet. That's last year. So how hot has it become over the last 100 years? Turns out it's about 1 degree Fahrenheit hotter. So you're saying, oh, relief, thank you, that's good. It's only a degree hotter. I thought you were going to say 10 degrees. 1 degree hotter is a big deal. I'll explain to you why. If you go back 5 or 6 or 7 degrees, that's how cold it was in the Ice Age. During the Ice Age, there was about 3,000 feet of ice above the United States. So we're going 1 degree forward. When folks met in Paris a couple of years ago, they agreed on a 2-degree limit on what we could heat the Earth before things got problematic. And fortunately, we're moving a little faster towards that 2 degrees than we would like. 2 degrees is an important number, because when you get to 2.5 and then 3 degrees, somewhere after 3 degrees, it becomes very difficult to sustain life on our planet. Now, that should be quite chilling. That's why this is, if you believe the scientific consensus, the most important issue of our time. Because I would argue, and I think you might agree, if we can't live on the planet, nothing really matters beyond that. Now, the reason I share this with you and why this relates to cities is if we're going to solve climate change, we're going to solve it in cities. And if we're going to solve it if we tackle transportation as the primary area, because that's a contribution of about 60% of greenhouse gases. The second biggest reason, which is about another 30%, which may surprise you, is beef, right? We have to eat less beef. That's a harder problem, in my view, to tackle than having people get out of their cars or just use electric cars. Now, the other image you might have of cities, and it's probably a right one, is this, right? This is the joy of dealing with government a lot of the time, right? In all aspects of our lives, what are we doing? We're using our phone to book theaters, go traveling, get insurance, organize our lives. We're running our lives off of smartphones, and yet when it comes to dealing with government, you have to go into an office, you got to take a number, you got to sit there. It seems rather dysfunctional, right? We're not matching expectations. I think you would like government to be as easy to use as your favorite app service. And that's true. We have to move government into a box, government onto a smartphone. The data now shows that most people access the internet via smartphone, not from a laptop or a desktop. This is where people are, and it's going to increase as more and more people get connected. It might surprise you, because each of us wake up every day, and we probably check Facebook or email. Half the world, about 3.6 billion people, wake up and don't check the internet because they don't have it. Half the world does not have any access to the internet still. Now that's both inequality, I think you'd argue, but it's also an opportunity. We've got to get those other 3.6 an increasing number of billion people to participate on the internet. So this is what motivates me every day, is how can we bring technology to bear on making our cities more livable, more workable, and ultimately more sustainable. This is the definition of a smart and connected city, when you bring technology to bear on these areas. Making cities smart is a big, complicated topic. It's why I love it. If you went into technology and your startup and the businesses you're in because you like solving problems, there's no better place than cities right now, because they are a collection of really difficult problems to solve. And I love that. I'm an optimist. I want to solve these problems. I want to make our cities amazing places to live. So we're covering diverse areas like water management and waste management and transportation and energy and public safety. Every one of these things really matters to you. You take it for granted, but it really matters to you. So we need smart and connected communities. The case has been made. Now, this is a global phenomenon. This isn't something restricted to Northern California, where I came from. This is Amsterdam. And in Amsterdam, they have lots of smart projects. It's a fully built environment, and they're looking to see, for example, how can we manage waste when we don't create any waste? Isn't that a better way to tackle a problem? We don't have to have waste management if we don't create it in the first place. Right? Here's a picture of a new city, and that's all I can show you because the city hasn't been built yet. This is Dubai South. Right now, if you go there, and I've been there, it's about 125 square miles of desert. Right? And right in the center will soon be the world's biggest airport. Right? And they're building a city around this. And they can learn from what works well, what doesn't work so well. This airport, by the way, which is staggering, will manage over 100 million people per year. These numbers are crazy. Now, this is another place I visited recently. This is Yache, about 2 hours north of Quito in Ecuador. This is along the Andes. And these are greenfield cities. These are brand new cities built from a green field. I've seen it. When I first visited this city, it was mountainside. When people would say, Jonathan, we're going to build a big city here. It's going to take about 30 years to build. It's hard to believe. And then you return about a year or 2 years later, and you see in this image universities being built and innovation labs. At the back of this picture, you see buildings that are going to be housing IBM and Microsoft professionals. And finally, talk about global. Africa now is beginning to think about their cities. This is a rendering of a soon-to-be city. They have to break ground. It's going to take a few decades to build. It's called Konza. It's about an hour outside Nairobi in Kenya. And they have a vision for universities and beautiful residences and wonderful tree-lined boulevards. So let's make this personal. Let me tell you a little bit about our story in Palo Alto, and I'll relate it to the things I've already been sharing with you. I want to talk about cars, right? Because cars are at the heart of the transportation question that I talked about earlier. If we're going to solve climate change, we're going to solve it with transportation, and cars are going to play a very big role. So here's the big takeaway for you. I'm going to walk you through an acronym called ACES. And this will describe to you a potential future, and it looks like it's unveiling itself, just like I'll describe. So A is for autonomous. Cars will drive themselves. This is no longer a debate. Cars are going to drive themselves. The only question is, when will it happen? By the way, the most interesting time will be during the transition, when humans are driving cars and robots are driving cars together. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster in the making, right? And by the way, we're all going to live through that. We're all going to be part of that transition. We can't get to the other side fast enough. Now, how do I know this, or why do I believe this? Well, I've traveled in self-driving vehicles, and I can tell you they feel safer than I'm with people who I know, friends and family. Right? Computers are much better at driving cars. Humans are really bad at driving cars. How do I know that? Sadly, almost 1.5 million people die around the world in car accidents every single year. I mean, it's a staggering number. 1.5 million human beings lose their lives. Imagine the families impacted, the friends. This is incredible. And then you factor in the amount of people who are injured, right? So humans are very bad at driving cars. You probably know a lot of people who've been injured or maybe even have passed away because of an accident. Self-driving cars, if that's the only reason for self-driving cars, we should pursue that alone. The C in ACES is connected. Cars are going to be connected. In Palo Alto, most of the major car companies have their innovation labs. And I get a chance to visit them often. We have sometimes roundtables. We talk about the future of automobiles. And they tell me that within about 2 years, most cars coming off the production line will be connected cars. Now, what does this look like? Well, I had a phone call from Audi a few months ago. And they called me up and they said, Jonathan, we'd like to bring our new car over for you to have a look at. And I was thinking, cool, I like cars. I look forward to this. They brought the car over, and they handed me the keys, and they said, you drive. I didn't realize I was going to drive. So I get in the car, and they say, drive around downtown Palo Alto. We'll come with you. And, it was definitely sort of fully loaded, state-of-the-art vehicle. And the dashboard is just a screen. There's no dials. It's just a screen. And as we approached one of the traffic signals, I could see a rendering of the traffic signal itself, and it was at red, and I saw the physical light was red, and it was counting down, 20, 19, 18. And when it went to 0, the light went green. The car was talking to the traffic signal. Now, this is really valuable, because no longer am I in the dark. When is this light going to change green? You've all been there, right? When you're waiting for the light to change green, what do? We turn around and we take care of babies, put lipstick on, we just the radio. You know what we do? We text, we look at our phones, and the light goes green, the cars behind us start honking, cars rear into the back of the car. When you have information about the environment, you drive better, and you can actually save time on the journey overall. The E is for electric. Cars are going to move to electric. There are already legislative bodies around the world that are debating laws that will prohibit the use of the combustion engine in the not-too-distant future. We are going to embrace electric, and it'll be largely solar-powered. Solar is the future of energy. I often ask myself, why isn't solar everywhere? Well, up until recently, solar has been very expensive, right? Coal and oil and gas, they're really, really cheap. So economically, we can't make the shift. But when solar drops, which it has, and it passes coal, the coal industry is over. End. Coal is not coming back. And we're getting to that point. We are moving quickly. Solar prices are dropping very rapidly. Finally, S is for shared. We likely will not own a car in the future. There will be a generation ahead of us now who will never buy a car and think owning a car is a crazy idea. Now, like many of you, I love taking Uber or Lyft or one of the sharing cars. I can relax. I don't have to worry about parking. Somebody else worries about driving. I can do a little work, perhaps. And the question I've been asking myself is, why don't I do that all the time? Why don't I? It's too expensive. It's economically not possible. If you add up buying a car, the gas, the insurance, the maintenance, all those things, it's still cheaper to own a car than it is to take Uber for all your rides or one of the other services. Now, why is it expensive? Because humans drive the cars. And you got to give a person a living wage. They got to make a living. So the price of the ride is expensive. Remove the humans, create autonomous vehicles in a shared fleet model, and the price drops really, really fast. It'll be much cheaper to call up a car on your phone, a self-driving vehicle, than to own a car. Car ownership will go away. Now, if you're not convinced by my reasons, all you got to do is look at what the CEO of Ford and General Motors and Volkswagen and BMW, ask them, look at what they've been talking about. These are companies that produce, a lot of vehicles every year. They employ a lot of people. They have big factories churning out cars. They don't think they're going to be in the car manufacturer business in the future. Look at how they're investing. They're investing in innovation, in self-driving vehicles and shared vehicles. Right? There will be a generation ahead who will not own a car. Now, you might think to yourself, well, Jonathan, that was interesting. Thanks for sharing that information about cars. Why is that got to do with smart cities, really? Well, on a number of levels. First of all, self-driving vehicles don't need traffic signals. They don't need stop signs. They don't need signage to where something is. Computers just don't need that stuff. In fact, if you look at America, we built our cities around cars. We didn't build our cities around humans, as they should be. The grid system is a product of building around a machine called a car, right? Because a human driving a car needs a traffic signal, a stop sign, an arrow, a warning cone, right? Computers don't need that. So we will be in a place in a few decades where we can start to think about designing our cities completely differently. I hope that we see the end of the grid system. We will think differently about how we design cities. Let's just take the example of parking spaces. It's incredible to me to know that there are about 1 billion parking spaces in the United States. And they're not very well utilized. You think about a large mall, a supermarket, where there are thousands of parking spaces. At about 7 o'clock at night, or 9 o'clock, depending when the store closes, all those parking spaces are there unused. And it's a horrible use of land. We did pave over paradise, not just in the US, but in Ireland, and in France, and in Australia, and all over the world. Self-driving cars don't need a lot of parking spaces, if at all. We may be able to get rid of these parking spaces and not have to worry about parking. I mean, that's very exciting to me. In an urban environment, when you're sitting in traffic here out in Dublin, and you're frustrated by all the traffic, 60% of the people driving are looking for a parking space, typically. Right? Certainly in a U.S. context, I should say. Right? So if you don't have to find parking spaces anymore, clearly you have an impact on congestion. And cars that are driven by computers will drive close together and pretty fast and be well coordinated. So congestion will largely go away, congestion on highways. Because most of the congestion are people changing lanes. Right? A person changes a lane 25 miles ahead, it impacts you 25 miles behind. If a person exits a freeway or a dual carriageway here, they impact traffic and it creates congestion. So that this migration to this model of ACEs I've described to you has real big implications. And it's going to happen pretty soon. Now, I'm not going to stand here and give you the date because I'm not entirely sure. But it's happening in our lifetimes. One of the wonderful things about the work that I do and why this is interesting work is you see the product and the impact it has on people's lives. Very often when I attend conferences like this and I hear from people talking about smart cities, what they're really doing is talking about a PowerPoint. In Palo Alto, we're building a smart city. And here's an example of a recent project I've been running of a crew that's putting up smart lighting sensors. And here's a closer look. Right? What do these smart sensors do? They do lots of things from looking at air quality 24/7. It can do things like do a scan of the local area and find out whether a parking space is available and make that data available to an app developer so they can do a find a parking space app. It can do things like detect whether there's human motion. Isn't it amazing that lights once it goes dark, or on until it goes light again, even if nobody's around. It seems remarkably inefficient. Lights should go on when there's activity. So we have those sensors do that. Now, let's move into the area of data in a city context. Now, you couldn't come to a conference like this and listen to a guy like me if I didn't talk about data, right? You know, I work in a city, and I get to talk to cities all over the world, and they always tell me the same things. There's not enough time. There's not enough money. We don't have enough skills. It's always about constraints. And these are all real problems. I'm not arguing with them. But we have one thing in abundance, and that's data. Cities generate an enormous amount of data, and it's an unleveraged asset of a city. Here's one example. So in Palo Alto, we have a reporting app, as many cities do. You can download this app. It's called Palo Alto 311. You can take a picture of a pothole or graffiti. You can take a picture of things that annoy you. We get all sorts of pictures. And it goes to the right person, hopefully it's City Hall, who dispatch an engineer, who fix the problem. And then we ask you, how did we do? Holds us accountable. I like that. And you rate us. Did we do terrible? Were we responsive? Did we do great? That helps inform us. Now, nothing interesting about this, really. It's just good to have. I would argue that every city should have one of these. And these are getting more and more popular. But it occurred to me one day a couple of years ago that we're generating an awful lot of really rich data. And if we take that data in near real time and map it against a picture or schematic of Palo Alto, we can tell what's happening right now. We can, for the first time, see the rhythm of the city, or as I like to say, the cadence of the city. In many ways, we can, for the first time, see the invisible. Because this is near real-time data, and it's for the entire city. You look at something like this and you say, hey, that's very interesting. What's happening in the southeast of the city or the northwest? And you can just double-click on it and get in there and then action it. You can make better data-driven, informed decisions. Right? You could change a city by taking the data that we're collecting anyway, looking at it a different way, and then actioning it, changing the future trajectory of the city. So when I figured this out, working with my colleagues, we said we should make all the data available and have the whole world innovate, because we can't do it alone. We don't have all the skills. We certainly don't have all the ideas. Right? So we started to publish our data. And innovators stepped up. And if you're interested in our data, just to show you the global nature of it, you can go to data.cityofpaloalto.org and see the data right now. We have a programmable API that you can even use. You can build apps, try to sell them back to me if you want. Companies have stepped up. This company here is a San Francisco-based organization called Civic Insight, and they use our permit data to make it really easy for anyone in Palo Alto to enter an address and then see what's going on in their street. You ever have that question yourself? Like, the heck is my neighbor doing? The heck is my neighbor doing? So you can just type in the address. We didn't have to create it. This company created the solution. And we see this time and time again. Now, I can't stand here in front of this amazing audience and not talk about our trees. We love our trees in Palo Alto. We really do. And one of the reasons is not only are they beautiful, but our city is named after a tree, a tall tree. That's what Palo Alto means. And so, just like with other data, we store an awful amount of data on our trees. You can click on a tree and see the name of it, when it was planted, when it was last cut, if it has any disease. I didn't know when I first started in public service that there were so many people interested in this kind of data about trees. We have urban foresters who look after these trees. Now, making the data available doesn't guarantee that innovators are going to step up to create amazing solutions and innovate and make money. You can't assume that's going to happen. You've got to create incentives for that. And a few years ago, we ran this thing, for example, called the Palo Alto Apps Challenge. And we invited not just Palo Alto, but all the surrounding communities to innovate against our data. And they did. Over 100 teams stepped up and had ideas and wrote some code. Here's an actual picture of some of the people participating. And at the end of the competition, or this challenge, we had 3 winners, first, second, and third. And today, one of those businesses, one of those ideas is a real business. They hire people. I mean, they make payroll every 2 weeks. They grow, they acquire customers. So by taking government data, inspiring people to participate in their communities, not only did we build a solution, but we created economic value and economic change. Now, a lot of people say to me, Jonathan, you must be very proud of that. You must be proud that you and some of your colleagues created this challenge and you created a business. I'm pretty happy, but that's not what I'm proud of. It might surprise you. What I'm proud of is 30% of the participants were under the age of 18. That's what I'm proud of. 30% of the participants in the Palo Alto Apps Challenge are under 18. Why does that matter? Well, young people, kids and teenagers, typically don't have a voice in our communities. It's very difficult for them to motivate and have a voice and change. They have opinions. You'd agree, right? They want things to happen. They want to see change. They want to be part of positive change. And we created an opportunity for them to do that, to be part of the change ahead. And they love that. They loved it. That's the feedback they provided to us. And I was very proud of that. Now, this is a kind of an interesting link for you. I encourage you to write it down or take a picture. When we did the Apps Challenge, a lot of organizations, media organizations, wrote about it. It was featured in Forbes magazine and lots of high-profile magazines. So as you can imagine, on the Monday after the challenge, and the days that followed, my phone started to ring. My inbox started filling up. People wanted to know, how did you do this thing? How did you actually create a business from doing a fun competition? How did you create jobs? This is an important topic. So for the first few days, I answered every email. I picked up the phone, and I said, here's what we did. But after about 5 days, I said, I can't do this. This is a full-time job. So I wrote a book on how to do it. And I want to give you, every one of you, a gift of this book so that you can use it yourselves, you can bring it back to your communities, and you can see the value of it. So here's the link. You go to that link, you'll get a downloadable ebook version of how to do your own Apps Challenge. By the way, it's not restricted to government. You can do an Apps Challenge within your business to create new ideas and new apps and new solutions. So that's for you. Now, as I come to the end here, I want to talk about the future, because it's all about our collective future. We're in this together. Often when I give this type of talk, people are sort of excited by what they've heard. They're like, wow, this was really cool. This was a lot of stuff I didn't know about. And I want to tell you, I've just given you a little tease today. And they're like, this is well underway. This is amazing. People are making money. We're improving our cities. And I'm like, wait a minute. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We are at the start of this journey. We're at the very beginning of the smart city opportunity. It's projected that in the next 10, 15 years, there's well over $2 trillion of economic opportunity for every one of you if you choose to participate, and those watching. The $1 trillion opportunity is ahead. Now, you have a choice. You could say, I want to do this because it's a socially positive thing to do, and I love that. That's largely what drives me every day. I do this because it's the right thing to do. That I want to help inspire amazing cities for us to live, work, and have as amazing sustainable communities. That's a great motivation. But if that's not enough, there's money to be made. There's $1 trillion or more opportunity that's waiting to be had. And I know this because I see it firsthand every single day. So we're just at the beginning. And I'll leave you with this question. Are you ready to build the cities of the future? Well, thank you very much. Thank you.